That sounds good. Well, my parents were nurses and they raised me to believe that it's important to make a difference in people's lives, so they would take me to a program called PADS, Public Action to Deliver Shelter, every Friday, and we would help prepare beds or prepare meals for the unhoused. And that gave me the sense of fulfillment and making a difference on an individual basis. But then fast forward, I got to high school and I learned about Barack Obama's central thesis. And Barack Obama said that government is neither inherently good or bad. It all depends on the people you put in those positions and the decisions that they decide to make about what levers to pull. That sparked in me an interest in making a difference in people's lives, but on a society-wide or much larger basis through public office and through government service. So what I decided to do was intern for Dick Durbin in college. I interned for Sheila Simon, the lieutenant governor as well, interned for the Cook County Public Defender's Office. Then I took a year between undergrad and law school to work full-time for the lieutenant governor. I ended up going to law school and interning for Barack Obama in the White House counsel's office, as well as the Navy Marine Corps Trial Judiciary in DC. After law school, I had over $200,000 of student loan debt to pay off, so I took two paths simultaneously. On one hand, I joined a law firm and began commercial real estate law, but also at the same time doing pro bono work for migrants, both asylum cases and TPS, temporary protected status. At the same time as doing that work, though, I joined the U.S. Army Reserve JAG Corps. And over the last 9 years that I'm still in the Army Reserve JAG Corps, I'm a major in a unit down south. I did 3.5 years in active duty, including a year in the Middle East and a joint task force countering ISIS, as well as a year in Fort Bragg with the 82nd and the headquarters of the Green Berets doing intelligence investigations, and most recently doing some time at Indo-PACOM, the Geographic Command for the Indo-Pacific. Now I have an advanced Chinese law degree, and so I was able to put that to use to help counter to help counter Chinese aggression towards Taiwan and support partners in the region. That work took me to the U.S. Department of Commerce, where I was traveling around the Asia Pacific with USAID and other funders from the State Department, working on how to improve legal, regulatory, and policy frameworks for those countries, helping foreign officials achieve their goals of improving their legal systems. The work was going really well up until the week of the inauguration, when I got a call saying, stop everything, cancel your programs, and come back to DC. And since then, of course, we've seen an unraveling of the rule of law directed by this president. At the same time as the president took after foreign assistance, he also removed the legal restraints from within the Department of Defense, including removing the top judge advocates, taking other steps to indicate that he did not want to be constrained by law. And in fact, we only saw a month ago, the president say that he is not but constrained by international law, he's only constrained by his own morality. And I think that view pervades everything that he does.
There's no morals.
So I returned to this area in March of last year. The very next month, Raja Krishnamurthy decides to run for Dick Durbin's seat. I take a look at the race, and there are a number of candidates here. I don't think anybody's intentions are bad. And in fact, my candidacy is not an indictment of anybody else. I simply think that I have a unique set of skills in this moment, specifically when the president is pursuing his agenda through the law, either weaponizing it or acting around it with impunity. I think it's important to send somebody to DC with experience practicing law, and I'm the only one in the race with that experience. But furthermore, when the president is looking to use the military to express his imperial aspirations, not only going after the American people, threatening the Insurrection Act, but also against our closest allies, threatening NATO, I think it's important to send someone to DC with military experience. I'm the only one in the race with it, but not just any military experience. Experience advising commanders in combat zones on the law of armed conflict and international law, but also advising four-star commanders on national security issues of strategic level consequence. So all that to say, I think my experience meets this moment, and more importantly, I have a plan. I have a 10-point plan about what levers that we can pull in government to actually respond to this president, hold him accountable, and change the layout of our frameworks, of our governing institutions, such that this cannot happen again in future administrations. So all that to say, I'm really excited to get to know what the issues are that you're paying close attention to. I've got a lot of solutions, a lot of ideas, would love to share them with you. So please, I would turn the floor open, and anybody wants to ask anything, I'd be welcome.
I'd welcome. 2 questions. Yes. One of them is, what languages do you speak?
Well, I speak Spanish and Mandarin.
Okay. And then my other question is, can you bullet point the 10-point plan?
Yes. So there's 3 different parts to I would say, breaking up the 10-point plan. Number one, Article 1 is, so it's the first three. We've got re-exerting congressional power. Then you're going to break down into two, limiting executive, and then part 3 is reforming the Supreme Court. So under number 1, reasserting congressional power. I think that the highlight of that one is on day 1, if the Democrats take back the House, we can create a commission to go after ICE and make sure that ICE is held accountable. Now, what does that mean? We can use the subpoena power of Congress to require that the Department of Homeland Security provide all the employee records of ICE agents who have been involved in ICE abuse incidents. For instance, we can get the employment records, the travel logs, the vehicle records. Having been a federal employee myself, I know that there's a lot of paperwork that exists anytime a federal employee moves around. Now, if the FBI can figure out who was amongst the thousands of random Americans who showed up at the Capitol on January 6th, oftentimes masked, certainly the US Congress can figure out who is behind the masks of the federal employees was behind the mask at any given time. And then once we find out who they are, we're able to hold them politically accountable, even if it's just one branch, one chamber of the House that the Democrats have, we can still impeach them. I have language that I have an argument that I've written that there's the language in the Constitution, we can pull different pieces together that will allow us to impeach all civil officers of the United States, which will include every ICE agent from top to bottom. Now, we won't be able to convict them necessarily without the Senate, but just that act of impeachment alone should be sufficient to prevent them from ever working in the federal government again. But more importantly, what that commission does is lay the groundwork for investigation cases, so that when we do have an independent DOJ come back, hopefully under Democratic administration in 29, we will have cases ready to go. In contrast to when Merrick Garland came into office and it took him 2-3 years to get going on a lot of the investigations from Trump's previous time. So I think that commission and that impeachment part are really important pieces. A couple other pieces of that first part that I would highlight are war powers and tariffs. Both are clearly enumerated powers of Congress under the Constitution, and yet administration after administration, we've seen the Congress step back and allow the president to accumulate more power. What we need to do is have Congress reassert those powers. Now, how do we do it? We were just talking about the war powers. And Congress could put in legislation the norms that it used to observe, that the presidents used to observe to allow congressional involvement. Now, how do we do it? With the NDAA, the National Defense Appropriations Act. That's the defense budget that's passed each year. Congress could do a 2-step process. 1, put in language there that says any expenditure of funds has to be made under a congressionally either declared war or authorized operation. Now, the second step is the most important. You put liability in for all the political appointees throughout the Department of Defense, from the top to the bottom of all political appointees. I would mirror it like the Anti-Deficiency Act. Right now, there's an act called the Anti-Deficiency Act that says if a leader of an organization within the DoD spends more money than is authorized, that person can be held criminally liable. Now, we use that same model to say if that person spends money that's not under the umbrella of a congressionally authorized war or operation or declared war, that person can be held criminally liable too. That disperses the liability throughout the system, which slows the process. I think a lot of political appointees aren't going to be willing to risk their necks and their skin by going for the president, what the president has ordered, if there's law that says they'll be held criminally liable. So in effect, it will slow the DoD to a halt, and the president will have to come to Congress to seek either a declaration of war or approval of an operation. That's important because we don't want this president starting new conflicts with other places. For instance, we were just talking about Venezuela. Venezuela, the president told the oil executives before he sent the Delta Force down to take out leadership. He didn't tell Congress until after it happened. Now, I would say is clearly against the founder's intent and is clearly against the Constitution. So my model would force notification and consultation with Congress before. The similar thing, I'll just do it briefly with tariffs. We can have Congress require that the president has to come and do a review and consent process, if not through the Senate, perhaps the House. We can decide which chamber later on. But all that to say, the president should not be able to put tariffs on another country without actually getting congressional authorization, as that's specified in the Constitution.
Just a question.
Yes.
Isn't that already a law and he just doesn't care?
It's a norm. It's a norm. It's a norm
Everything
because of the
has to be
Constitution. The Constitution says it's within the exclusive remit of Congress. However, it was a norm that the president was allowed to do some things, but not abuse the flexibility. This president came in and overrode the norm. He didn't abide by the restraint at all. He put tariffs on places that only had penguins. He showed that he was just so aggressive with the use of power. Just like the war powers, other presidents have used the military in ways that were not authorized by Congress. But the degree, the acceleration of presidential accumulation of power is unique under this president. So all that to say, there are things that Congress can do to codify those norms to force, as a forcing function, to bring the executive back to consultation with Congress. Now, when it comes to the executive branch, I think there's a couple of things, and I'll just highlight the most exciting ones. I think we need an independent Department of Justice. Right now, the president can go to Pam Bondi and say, Pam, I want my political opponents investigated, whether it's the chairman of the Fed or Jerome Powell or the former FBI director or Jimmy Kimmel. He can tell people he can tell Pam Bondi to investigate. He can also say, Pam, I don't want Homan investigated. Homan, who received $50,000 in a fast food bag for official action, and she looked the other way. Right now, we need more than ever to have a check on executive power from within the executive branch, because our system of checks and balances always presumed that in the Congress, loyalty and it would be to the institution rather than to the party. But clearly, that has not been the case.
So would you call that the norm, what you're just talking about? Like that was a norm too, that you just didn't do it.
The norm was political independence of the DOJ. Yes.
Yeah, or you would be the president.
And even with Biden, remember Biden, he didn't tell the DOJ not to investigate his son. He also didn't tell the DOJ to investigate Trump. Merrick Garland took his own time because he was fully politically, didn't have that independence. Nothing forced Biden to do that. That was just the norm he inherited. Yeah. And the presidents before him had done the same. This president, though, is breaking that by seeing the DOJ as his personal law firm. And so what we need to do is remove the position of Attorney General from out from under the political influence of the president, because the president currently appoints, and make it a fully independent position that's elected by the people on the midterms. Now that would be a 4-year term, and just think, if we were right now under that system, we would have the ability to find a Democrat to go up against a Republican, of course, in November, to actually take on this president from within the executive branch. Now, there are a couple of hurdles to that, but when people ask, how does executive power look like under that model? Well, look at our state. There are 43 states that already have a democratically elected governor, independently elected from the Attorney General. It works out just fine. We can still have the 3 branches of government, even with different offices represented independently.
So I think my question is move on to Supreme Court, the Supreme Court, because they're out of control.
I agree with you. In the judiciary system, almost every single employee is subject to an ethics code that's very stringent, that requires conflict of interest disclosure, that requires financial disclosure. It's very robust ethics requirements to be in the judiciary. There are 9 exceptions, though, and they're all the Supreme Court justices. What we need to do as Congress, and Congress can do this very easily, is pass the legislation that requires that same ethics code that's in place for everybody else to also apply to the folks at the very top. And that's first step. Then the second step, of course, is I think there needs to be a rotation model such that we don't have lifetime appointments anymore. Yeah. There's a movement of people. We can talk about the years, whether it's 15, 16, 17, 18 years of service, move on, or maybe even shorter. We need to be able to cycle folks off into more of a retired position where they can still have some role in advising the court, but they are not actually the 9 that are making the decision.
How about the number of justices?
I'm open to it. In the past, our country has had different numbers. I just don't want to get into a race where we start accelerating and expanding the court, and then the next party that takes over expands the court, and then it becomes an unwieldy number. So I'd rather go after the term first before the actual number.
You know when they talk about impeachment, and then they say, like, forget impeachment, it would take too long, and we need more action quicker, and you're talking about norms and stuff, and how Trump can just overlook all these norms and do what he wants to do. how fast do you think that we could actually change the way things are going, and stop Trump from behaving the way he does?
It depends on which piece of it. I think there are some things we can move
generally
quickly.
speaking, you can't do that then, I guess. I'm just like thinking.
We can't do anything until we take
Everything
power,
is gonna
right?
take forever to get it.
Till your kids go to law school.
There are some,
We're
And your
gonna say
grandkids.
2029.
so there are
It's
some
gonna
things
take
that
a
can,
long time.
there are some things that can happen
Yeah.
quickly and some things that would happen long. I agree that impeachment is not likely to be the tool that works the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
because impeachment would require a extra seats in the Senate that we probably will not pick up. If we're being frank about the likelihood, the Democratic Party will likely take the House, but not the Senate. And of course, for impeachment, it requires impeachment in the House, but then it requires conviction in the Senate to actually remove the person from power. So all that to say, there is a tool though that if we only have the House, we will be able to use, and it's called inherent contempt. It's one of the other pieces of the Trump accountability plan. We've all heard of statutory criminal contempt. That's where if Congress says to somebody, you have to come testify, just for instance, Bill Clinton was compelled to testify before Congress just this past few weeks because of the Epstein files. And he was initially refusing, and Congress was going to threaten him with criminal contempt. That means they could have fined him or put him in prison if he refused to testify. We've of course seen Congress do that to members of the Trump administration from the last time around when they refused to cooperate with Congress. That's statutory contempt. And as a function of being statutory, that is subject to presidential pardon. So the president, whoever it is, can come in and pardon whoever has been charged with statutory contempt. The difference with inherent contempt is that it springs and arises from the investigatory function of Congress, which means it is not subject to presidential pardon. Now, this is a power that has not been used since the 1920s. And it's...
Do it.
That's the thing. So let's say, for instance, a Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem is actively telling her agency and her department to violate the law. We have a basis there that we have the House to issue a citation of inherent contempt against Kristi Noem because she is violating the laws as she goes and executes those laws. If we issue that citation, Kristi Noem is told to come and report to the House floor. Now, either she comes or she doesn't. And if she doesn't, we can send the sergeant at arms for the House to go and get her, to arrest her and bring her to the House floor where she has read the charges. She has an opportunity to respond, and then Congress takes a vote to either fine or to incarcerate her for up to 2 years, the term of the Congress. Now, people say, what did that actually look like? Congress sending the sergeant at arms to go arrest an executive officer? That doesn't sound like anything that's happened before. Well, gosh. Shouldn't we say that in this unprecedented time of exercise of executive power, shouldn't we use all the constitutional tools available to Congress to act in unprecedented ways to stand up and meet this moment? I'm prepared to do it, and that's one of the reasons that I've been pushing that idea as hard as I can, because it's available to Congress, it's not being used. If we have a simple majority in the House, we will have enough of a basis to go after Noem, to go after Hegseth, to go after Pam Bondi if they're directing illegal activity in their own agencies.
I have another one. Elon Musk. He just skates away. He destroyed everything, made us weaker, did all this damage, took our stuff,
Stole money and data.
stole money,
And
stole
data.
all our
He's
information.
probably a traitor.
Of course he's a traitor. You know what I mean? He's not even from here. What can we do to him? Because he needs to be held accountable. We need our money back. We need to have some kind of sanity. People are dying all over the world because of him. Children
up
are starving.
USAID.
AIDS victims are dying. It's crazy. And we're all upset
Messed up all
about,
the departments.
we're all upset about Trump. I mean, get him. But, but Elon is one who destroyed the shit for him. You know what I mean? And we're never gonna get that back.
He's one of them.
Well, we got microchip, right?
Stephen Miller.
Oh, Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
He's gotta be like hung by his toenails.
There
I
needs
hope
to
you
be,
recorded this.
We'll let you talk, sir.
I'll tell you where I live.
We're venting.
there needs to be a two-step process. One, accountability and consequences for the bad acts that have occurred by Musk and others, but then also changes to our governmental frameworks so that no future administration can come in with some type of billionaire that
Right.
does something similar. So number one, the actual accountability piece. We don't have political opponent.
I know, but we already knew that this was illegal. You know what I mean?
So, but that's-
So he started, what is,
The enforcement-
I mean, I
the
know we
enforcement.
make laws, but we keep making laws and he keeps breaking
Oh,
them.
no, we
The
don't.
enforcement of the law.
Right, we don't need to make the laws in the case of Elon,
We already
because there
have
were
it.
so many laws that he broke already. We just need the investigation of those laws, permanent investigation of that conduct, the preparation of the cases, to be ready to go in 2029 in January, when a President Pritzker, when a President Buttigieg, when a President Gretchen Whitmer, whoever is gonna be the Democratic president, will come into office. And we don't need to break out the AG right away. I'd be in favor of it, but I think that's gonna take some time to do. What we can do at the very least is restore the political independence of the AG. And even within a politically independent AG, if you have cases ready to go and you slide those over, that AG and the Department of Justice will be able to investigate and pick up from where the Congress has left off. So basically what I'm proposing.
Can we get SpaceX back?
Can we?
Get SpaceX back?
So SpaceX, there's a couple different things with SpaceX. One is that a lot of the Doge employees raided the social security files. So the most sensitive information that the government has on American citizens is now in the hands of the
Microchip?
right, in the hands of people who work for Musk at any one of his numerous companies. So what we need to do is make sure that those people are not sharing the information to the extent they have, because there's already evidence that they have, that they face those criminal penalties. We don't have to write laws to prohibit them from doing it, because those laws already exist. But what we need to do is make sure that there can't be a structure. The thing that we need to outlaw going forward is that no person can receive this extraordinary power that Elon Musk was given, regardless of whatever contribution they've made. The only people that can receive that extraordinary access are people that are either elected or people that are appointed to pre-existing positions. There can't be a creation of a new position, a new agency like Doge, under the political whim of a president. There has to be an actual institution based and institutional checks within that institution. So even if you put someone in charge of let's say the Health and Human Services Department, you can't unilaterally make political changes all throughout. I'm talking specifically about RFK, who is not only is the head of HHS, but he's inserted politics into the CDC, into the NIH. We need to break those agencies out from under the political umbrella and preserve their scientific and research-based practices by not allowing there to be any political person above them. How we do that is model it after the Fed. The Federal Reserve runs our monetary system, and it does so with such success historically because it's seen as politically independent. It makes its decisions based on data. It doesn't make its decisions based on politics. We need that same model for all of our health-based or government agencies. So all that to say, there are things that we can do to hold Musk accountable by preparing cases for a DOJ, but it's not going to happen under this administration. So that's the other thing. He could be pardoned. However, that's one of the things that I'm proposing in the Trump accountability plan to limit executive authority. The pardon was envisioned as an act of mercy. When I was in the Obama White House, we reviewed cases brought to us by the DOJ that have been submitted about people that had drug possession and drug use offenses. Oftentimes, a lot of those cases during the Obama years were from the 90s, where crack cocaine had extraordinary criminal penalties attached to it, versus other types.
10 times higher for different communities.
Exactly, and so there were certain communities that were overrepresented by far, with 30-year sentences, 40-year sentences for trace amounts of a certain type of drug. And that made a lot of sense that there would be a presidential sign of mercy or act of mercy there. But when we have presidents of both parties pardoning their family members, or pardoning their donors, or pardoning whoever bribes them the most, or whoever family dumps the most cryptocurrency into their family's personal crypto wallet, we have to get involved. We have to have Congress either review the pardon or strip the pardon entirely. I still see there's utility of the pardon existing, but there should be some congressional role in providing oversight. So that's another piece, and you're right to raise it. But again, the piece that's not pardonable is inherent contempt, and that's why I'm really pushing that tool.
Awesome.
And they only get that for not showing up?
Oh no, that's for statutory contempt. If you refuse to comply, what inherent contempt is there? When I'm pushing it for is if you refuse to, if you are directing your agency to break the law. So Kristi Noem, Pete Buttigieg, Pam Bondi.
And that's not pardonable?
That's not pardonable.
Pete Hegseth.
Pete
He
likes
likes
that.
that.
Oh,
You said Pete
God.
Buttigieg, but I
Oh
know.
no, I like Pete Buttigieg. I'm trying to get Pete Buttigieg's support. He's on my mind. Whiskey
Yeah,
boots.
yeah.
I have a question. You know how the Clintons requested like a public? Is that how it's gonna go down? Like instead of a closed door?
For inherent contempt?
Right.
It could
Or,
be open.
You know, the Clintons getting asked to come.
Yeah.
Like
They're
that's-
going
is
behind
that
door,
who-
they're going
Behind
behind.
closed doors.
It's not.
It's
So
just
their
gonna be-
request for a public, it
Not
doesn't.
nothing.
But they could
yeah.
release the tapes like they did with, you know.
They wanted.
So their
They'll cherry
their
pick.
request for a public.
cherry pick
for-
what
What does she have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Not inviting all
It's a-
kinds, I
it's
mean,
a
she's
show.
not in the Epstein files, so it
I
doesn't
mean, I
make
know,
any
yeah,
sense.
I know they
It's a
want to
show.
allow it just because they.
What do we
asked.
do
It's
about
just
Citizens
illegal
United?
to make it
I was just
public.
And the
gonna ask
fact,
that.
and the fact that right now there's a case where they're trying to even
Well,
They're gonna
water
try
down
and
the
say that
laws
she
more
lied so
about
they can
campaign
campaign
finance.
in Congress, because they
We're
want her
screwed.
in
Oh,
jail.
agree.
Bye.
The,
So what are we
the
gonna-
question
what do you-
is, what are we gonna do about Citizens United?
Thank you, Don.
I really appreciate you bringing up that question because we have seen so many of the different
Yeah.
problems in our country can be traced back to the presence of corporate and dark money in our election system. We are supposed to have a democracy that represents the American people, and yet those who are most active in corporate in political spending are not individual human beings, but rather these larger groups that have particular interests in mind. So when we talk about Citizens United really opened up the door to super PACs. Super PACs being those entities that can pour unlimited amounts of anonymous money into elections and for any particular outcome, and they don't have to. For instance, there's an opponent in the race who is accepting money from a super PAC, and that super PAC has put $400,000 of money that's untraceable, that's anonymous, and really unlimited into the race to put her onto TV. And I simply don't think that's a fair thing to do in a democracy. So what we need to do, pardon me? Sorry?
Which one?
Melissa Bean has received that. So
Yeah, I met her and I said, you know, you're
We
very nice.
won't
but I
tell
vote for
anyone
you.
except when we post this.
oh, not a problem. I've said this openly in public forums that we need, and I'm endorsed as a unrig Washington candidate. That's a designation by End Citizens United, the group, to show that I'm committed to getting corporate money out of politics, to changing, if we needed to do it, to change the Constitution to specify that there should be no corporate money in politics, that any money that does come into politics has to be traced to a specific individual and has to be limited under a certain amount. But more than that, we need to make sure that these positions of public trust are not seen as personal piggy banks for members. For instance, while we talked about the Supreme Court already, under the legislative branch, it's the same thing. Any staff member of Congress is subject to severe restrictions about whether they can trade stocks or buy stocks or do whatever, do a lot of different financial movements. Except for members of Congress. Members of Congress have access to
On
industry
both
wide.
sides of the aisle.
And Democrats
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
offenders just with the Republicans as well. What we need to do is apply the rules that currently exist to most of the employees, also to the very top, which that would take out that financial incentive of getting to Congress just to get rich.
The
And
trading thing.
Sorry?
The trading.
Yeah, same, that's what she's talking about.
I have a question to you. It feels like with you talking, it feels like on your free time, you go to think tanks. Like you have a lot of information that you like to share and, that kind of a thing where you're interested in what other people have to say and then you have things to say too. And I was wondering if is that going on like with congressmen or senators? Do they have think tanks? How do we get around this? I mean, you talk, it makes sense to everything you say to me, but how far does it go? Somebody like yourself, if you're elected or whatever, are they, I hope to God that you have some kind of power, whatever, that people are gonna be able to listen to you.
I think that you're right to identify that there are a lot of forces that preclude or that even dissuade actual change in Washington.
Yeah.
There's a lot of friction with points, if you will. I think, though, that we're facing a really extraordinary opportunity in this next cycle as over 10% of the current Congress is not coming back. They're either resigning, quitting, or just not seeking re-election.
Right.
So with 10% of a body to move out, that's the historic level. We've never seen that type of turnover before. That means 10% of the new body will reflect the urgency of the moment and will be responsive to the people's needs. Whoever you send from this district is much more likely to go in and to want to actually make change. And it's almost a mandate there. And so, at least in terms of historical proportions of members of Congress coming. So all that to say, there will be an expectation from the American people for a lot more action from Congress. And there will be a moment where the Democrats actually have the House for the first time in so many years, that we can take a lot of these actions. So certainly as a freshman legislator, I wouldn't be the most influential. However, I think I would bring a lot of ideas that I've developed, and I'd be able to feed them into the Democratic Party that's looking and hungry for solutions. I don't know if Hakeem Jeffries is the right guy to do that. I'm keeping my options open to see actually who steps up. And I will vote for the person who is the most active in saying that we need to hold the administration accountable and make dramatic steps of congressional reassertion of power.
Yeah.
I know, right now I would like
Not the man for the time.
Massey. He's the wrong side.
Yeah.
He's wrong.
So you think with the new group coming in, because the Democrats had it before, the power and stuff, but they sat on their heels, they didn't do anything.
When Obama came in, they really sat and did not too
And
much.
do you think you'll be able to help motivate, push the current ones, or the ones that are not leaving?
I think the two
towards
are gonna
action?
do it too.
Well,
Yeah.
when
I
you
don't
have
know, I hope so.
when you
Last
have
time
di-
they didn't do anything.
Well, when you have Democrats controlling all both executive and both chambers, there's the sense that the enemy is not necessarily the Republicans. The enemy becomes different factions from within the Democratic Party. If Democrats, though, can take back the House and see all Democrats as a team and not go after one another with purity tests or with requiring alignment with every single issue, if we can see each other as a full force and use that whole number. Right now, we're seeing Republicans struggle to do that. The Republican majority is so slim that the Speaker Johnson, has to make special deals with a couple members because otherwise the members will vote against the party. If the Democrats can show more unity in this next cycle, if they have power in the House, we can be so much more effective.
I think that to be quite honest, if you do look back, when we did have the House, there were a lot of things, even with Biden. We cannot,
Nancy Pelosi
Yeah.
got a lot of stuff
we
done.
cannot forget all the good things that happen
Right.
when we're in charge. and
Healthcare.
Yeah, and it's just,
Infrastructure.
healthcare is number one. And they've done nothing but try to dismantle the healthcare since day one. They fought it and fought it and fought it, and I'm not sure if it's single payer or or Medicare for all. I'm not sure, but it needs to be discussed. And I think it's time that we get some, for me, at my age, some younger people in there to start thinking, because it's their future. They are getting a lot of jobs that are not offering healthcare. Healthcare, if they try to purchase it, it's like, it's insane. It is absolutely insane. So you're giving up, the economy, everything, the affordability, what everybody talks about, affordability.
So maybe it's good everything's breaking.
Yeah.
Because didn't it break before when we got Social Security and all that stuff? We had to do a lot of stuff.
Well, there was the Depression, and then they brought in,
Because of the
all
road.
that.
How do we move toward the unity we'll need when we do this? Not just selecting good candidates that want that, but is there more that we can do?
I think the number one thing that the citizens can do, in addition to helping choose which candidate and supporting candidates that they think reflect their values, the number one thing that you can do is to actually engage in the power of persuasion. We talk a lot about fighting. We want a fighter in Washington. We want a fighter to go and fight for us. What is you and so many others, and I think that impulse, that's correct. And so we need to translate, what does that mean, though, in the context of democracy? It means persuasion. It means getting others to agree in the value, the idea that you have to bring to the table. And so as a legislator, I would want to engage in what I call domestic diplomacy. Use the diplomatic skills that I learned in the Asia Pacific. First, listen. Second, seek understanding. And then third, share information in that order. using those same skills to build coalitions around the common threats and challenges that we face, like the affordability challenges. It's equally expensive for a Republican to buy a house as it is for a Democrat. It's equally expensive to go to a grocery store for both parties. There are common challenges. So if we can gather a consensus around identifying the problem and then offering a solution, that there's a greater thrust in that direction. But when it comes to actually being a citizen and without any particular form of public office behind you, if there are people in your lives, I'm not saying go out and talk to the MAGA folks in your family if you have one. I just know that strains relationships. But if there are people in your lives who aren't paying attention, that's a ripe person to actually ask, how are they doing? Everybody's got some issues that they're facing, and if you can have them themselves identify a problem that they're facing and then tie it into a policy that's coming in out from this administration, or more importantly, tie it to a solution that's being proposed by the Democrats, that person can be brought in, and that person can be an additional vote, so that when we do get to 2028, we will have more people vote our way in the presidential election than did the last time. And that itself is the key to fighting in democracy. So there's work that everyone in this room could do. I'm not saying go out and talk to the full, Kool-Aid MAGA drinking people that.
Yeah, because they suck.
Right, well, that will never see things,
Right.
and it would take.
It's a cult.
It would be too high of a personal cost for you to bring them over. But there's a lot more people out there that aren't paying attention. Only between 5 to 6% of the people in this congressional district of 760,000, 5 to 6% will actually pull a Democratic primary ballot. There's a vast majority in this district that does not participate at all. You could have an effect there, but one at a time. Just asking people in your everyday life, not saying, have you considered joining the Democratic Party? But rather, what's going on in your life? There's actually a thing that's going on here. Do you want to come and learn more about it? And then go from there.
I think that one of the things that's most important is to understand that I truly believe we are more alike than not alike, the majority of people, because we all face the same challenges. You have a small percentage of billionaires, and then you got the rest of us. And as you go down, I think if you go back to like the time with the civil rights, and even MLK used to say, if we could just agree that poor people, black, white, no matter what, we all have that same problem. But instead, the politicians have always tried to divide us, because if you divide us, then we're not looking at the commonality. And that's really hard to get past. And, the whole culture, yesterday at the Super Bowl, for God's sake, you know what I mean? Let's try to divide up what is really something common. You don't have to learn Spanish. You need to know how to dance, maybe. We have a lot more in common, and we need to work towards. Democrats got a big tent. We got them from here to there, and so we gotta we do have to listen to everybody. You can't just go all progressive. You can't just go all conservative. You have to bring and find what the commonality and then making steps. I'm sorry.
I completely agree with you. In fact, and on the logo of my campaign, it's on my yard sign as well. You'll see in the corner there an American flag, what's supposed to represent an American flag blowing in the breeze. Because when I was in Iraq, that flag didn't represent Democrats, it didn't represent Republicans, it represented all of us. And I think despite all the forces in Washington that are trying to pull us apart, despite all the forces in the algorithms of our phones and the social media apps that we use, there's still that common ground that we can build on, and we have to get back to a place where we can do that. We have to get through this Trump phase first, which requires accountability and consequences and changing of the structure of government, but there is enough ground for us to get back to refocus on building our union once more. And so I completely align with your view.
It seems like the Democrats, being a Democrat, that's how I probably would feel anyhow, but the Republicans just mess everything up, and then the Democrats have to go back and dig up the
Clean it up.
pieces.
And then
And it
8 years,
takes-
make it go good, and then
And then it
They
happens
ruin it in
again.
two.
And even with Biden, I don't care what anybody says about Biden, but in the first couple of years, he had to deal with COVID, saving people's lives, super serious, that whole thing. Who thought a president would have to worry about that?
Still got
Yeah,
stuff
no,
Why
done.
was it so complicated to help save
Still
all
got
those
stuff
lives?
done.
Because our systems are already like, not where they should.
Well, okay, there was an epidemic.
Oh, no,
So-
no, but I mean, like, I
We
agree
had
with
to
you,
deal
and
with
like,
it.
it was as hard as it was, because to begin with, like,
And then after he kind of figured that one out, he's over in Europe trying to pick up the pieces that was made a big mess before by Trump. So that took him a while to do that kind of
Yeah,
stuff and
that's
do
why-
great friends. But now,
That's why Obama did good. I think,
NATO,
because he had
strengthen
8 years.
NATO.
Cause he got, 4 years to fix it and then 4 years to.
and I think that's what Joe probably would have been happy doing if he was younger and he would have been able to do something
Yeah.
like that, but, that didn't
Anybody
happen.
else have
But
any questions?
My point is, it
Yeah,
just seems
some
like
people in the back.
No?
it just breaks down, it's like a bad cycle.
It is a cycle, and there are unfortunate consequences when Democrats aren't able to sell the success that they've achieved.
Yeah.
And it comes down to elections.
And we're not good at that.
And we have to get better at it if we want to keep the power once we've had it. We need to be able to demonstrate, but even more than that, we need to focus on the issues that benefit more and more Americans. We need to be able to say to folks that we've brought down costs rather than just giving them additional rights that they may or may not be using. We need to, of course, keep those rights and keep the programs that help smaller groups of people, but we need to also focus on making an argument for why more and more people should see value in the policies that we're pursuing.
And understand it's
I mean,
Yeah.
I think I fixed this the other day. Well, it didn't work. It was a bad guy. But we were having a Facebook fight. You know how that is. I don't mean to, but it's like, come on, here is here is the actual video. Like, shut up. You know what I mean? Here's the video. And he's like, Trump derangement says whatever, you're a liberal. I says, yeah, I'm a liberal. You worked 5 days a week, not 7. You're welcome. You have Social Security. You're welcome. You get paid holidays. You're welcome. Your wife had maternity leave. You're welcome. You know, and then I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Because they got nothing to say to you. They could only just say, you don't know what you're talking about. But we do all those things for the people.
Certainly, and the underlying programs are very popular. For instance, I was on the phone with someone who said, "Don't bring us into that socialism. We don't want any more socialism. But also, don't touch my disappointment insurance." Right, exactly. So,
Right? It spins your head. It just spins
the
your head.
benefits are popular, so we just have to be able to communicate it to people in a way that doesn't trigger some red flags, as they've been trained to do from Fox News and News Nation. And that's the other piece of diplomatic diplomacy. I like Pete Buttigieg a lot. I'm not trying to use inherent contempt against him. I like Pete Buttigieg a lot. I liked how when he was Secretary of Transportation, he would go on to Fox News at least once a week, if not every day. And he's still doing it because he's bringing a different type of thinking, a different logical even framework to the problems that's challenging the thinking of the people that watch those stations.
Did you say that Sean Casten is like downstate doing that kind of work?
Sean Casten,
Sean was good the other day with,
Yeah.
that's it. He was, oh my, did you tell him? He did good.
yes, and
I'll
Sean.
see him in 2 weeks or whatever, right? At the gala.
Sean was, I believe, last year he decided to go downstate to the 3 different red districts in the state, and he decided to try to break through and have town halls down there. That's a very similar model to what I would like to do, but instead of having 3 a year, to go frequently down, not only to the red state parts of this state though, to also to Iowa, to Wisconsin, to Michigan, to Indiana, places in the Midwest that used to be strong Democratic,
How about Addison?
Addison too, or in Bloomingdale. There are red places in this area, and yet
Itasca.
there's enough.
Wooddale.
But there's enough blue in this area that at least the power that's sent to Washington or sent to Springfield, tends to be blue. Now there are places where there's not a single Democrat voice that's challenging these narratives.
Yeah.
There's silos of misinformation and
And what are they
disinformation. Fox News. We have to break into that silo by actually showing up, and that's the work that I think I'd be prepared to do.
I stopped going to a restaurant because they keep showing Fox News on TV, and I never asked them to turn it off. But it's like I didn't think it would be so rude to ask them to turn it off. But that's all they did was play it while you're eating, having breakfast there or something. I'm like, why am I in here? Listening to that. You got to make choices yourself. So not to. The owner or whatever, not to. What is the
And what
word?
about all these,
Make a choice.
Yeah.
not newspapers, but even the regular channels, you can tell they're not showing us stuff, cause I am looking at stuff and I'm like,
and
this
then
is news. And they're
NBC
going-
deleted the booing for
Yeah,
dance at
they
the
blanked
Olympics.
out the booing of,
NBC.
at the Olympics,
If
updated.
So I think that there's, everybody is so afraid, if you look at Bezos when he first came out, democracy dies in darkness.
Yeah.
That was the first Trump administration, because with the Washington Post, he really wanted to make some changes. And these people are so at this level, they're so connected to the financial gain
Yeah.
that he knew he had to take otherwise he loses, whatever, his
Amazon?
space. Apart from Amazon, he's got that space, he's got,
Blue Origin.
yeah, thank you. And so they're kind of just bending the knee, right? And doing what they have to do.
But they legitimately, you know, if I had a lot of money, I would have a lot of money, but I would do a lot of good things, or at least some good things, or at least
Right.
one good thing. But I don't understand how they have all this money and they don't do nothing good.
But what you were saying before
Can we have,
about
they're soulless, you
Right.
know what I mean? But like,
letting people know the good things that we do. And today I saw a meme, and it was a guy that just said, Mia came up, he asked me, why are you a Democrat? And he said, well, because, and he named 50 reasons, and they were all great. And I thought, we just need to do that.
We need different messengers. We need people
Gun
that.
safety limits.
I gave 20 points to this little asshole.
No, like,
20 points. Like, why you, if it was Biden
go.
or Obama,
Yeah.
Be ready
you would love it.
and tell them the good
No, if they did any one of these things that I listed, 20 of them, I'd be against them in a minute, because it's not right, it's just not right.
now, as like a representative or whatever, do you ever like imagine what it would be like for yourself to be on TV and giving your opinion on things?
Oh, sure. I've been on TV already. Earlier this past September, I was on NBC News because speaking not as a candidate, but as a former, not as a candidate though, but speaking as a former judge advocate. We said former just to keep the army off me. I was speaking out because this Pete Hegseth administration of the DOD wanted to send the military lawyers to the Department of Justice and to not act as judge advocates, but rather to act as immigration judges.
Oh, yeah.
Judge advocates are not trained in immigration law, and there is no nexus to the military for immigration.
Yeah.
Rather, the president wanted a particular outcome. He wanted more people deported, so he sent people who fall under his command and control in the military to adjudicate cases in the way that he wanted to. And we've already seen the data that one person defied the preferred proportion of 90% of people removed. One person was granting stays more frequently, with people allowing people to stay in the country. That person was removed after a month. And so it's borne out in the way I predicted that this president he wanted a particular outcome in the courts, and historically he's in both in the his private capacity and his official capacity. He's been frustrated a lot by how the courts have ruled and not in his favor. And so now he put in the judges that have to actually follow his orders to make sure that he could get the outcome he wanted. So I do picture, I would think I was fine on the interview. I'd be happy to.
Well, you know how like they have people there for like 5 minutes or whatever talking. I don't even know how much time, and it always seems like they don't give them enough time to really get their point across. Sometimes.
I think
how
that-
frustrating would that be?
I know, but to be quite honest, I think that television is going down the toilet. I think the next generation is not using the mainstream media. You're a young person.
not.
You're
need
not.
a
I mean, it's
Netflix
TikTok, it's YouTube,
thing.
it's everything else. It
Movie.
is.
It should be just be a movie.
It's old
On
school
Netflix.
people that are watching the news. But even I don't watch any news. I mean, I watch Rachel, but.
But I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts were about getting your point across.
So one of the ways that I've struggled in, especially in debates, is that there's so much to say and so little time to say it.
Yeah.
So it is a point of growth that I can slim down what I want to say and make sure it only hit the high points. But certainly I think I can do
It
that.
looks like some people have to go. Is there something like that you want to say to all of us that will stick with us? That like what do you want to say to all of us for the end of the
Like
night.
if we got one thing out of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, vote for me.
Marching orders.
So the number one thing is that you, on a cold night, you all decided to come out. This itself is the engine of democracy. You have a vote. You have something very precious in this world, and it's uncommon across the world. You can actually do something with that vote and choose who makes decisions and who represents you. Now, there are a couple different ways of helping. If you're so inclined, many of you have already donated to the campaign. I'm really grateful for that. In addition, though, if you have more, let's say if you have more abundance of time and you have money, if you're willing to spend any time calling on the phone, that's going to be the number one way to reach voters across this district. If you, let's say you have 10
So
minutes.
actually, I got a phone call today and said, "Hi, Sally," and I picked it up because I heard your name. And I said, "Hi," I was at work, and she said, "I'm calling to talk to you about Dan Tully," and I said, "Oh, he's gonna be at my house tonight." She started to laugh. We had a little short conversation, but I thought, yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think it works.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And especially when it's cold out and it's going to be, relatively
Yeah,
cold
you
for the
can't
next
get out there.
5 weeks. If you have 10 minutes to make 10 calls, that's a huge help. All it involves is if my campaign manager has your email address, he can send you something directly onto your phone. You press a button on the phone number, it calls you. You don't have to dial, it calls for you. The person is a Democrat, so they're not going to be a MAGA person who's very rude and angry. Sometimes they might hang up on you, but they aren't going to tear into you and defend, go MAGA on you. So all that to say, if you've got time, or if you have a time that you can knock on doors, that would be a huge help as well. And then the last two things, I have a bunch of yard signs in the car. If you're inclined to take a yard sign and display it out in front of your house, that's the biggest endorsement possible from a citizen, is that the person in front of their house saying, this is the person I'm voting for. And even if you like other candidates and you want to display other yard signs too, every display of a yard sign helps. So I'm not looking for exclusivity in that regard. The last thing I would say is if you tell some friends who live in the area, because this room is much more informed about the issues than the vast majority of the people who live in this district. If you tell my name to 5 or 10 people that you know, that's the biggest way that you could actually make the needle move in the direction so that I can go to DC and pursue that accountability, but also change the conditions so that this never happens again. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or concerns, or even if you get on the phone and somebody asks you, where's Dan's position on this, that, or the other thing? You don't have to answer that. You just say, I'll take your number down, I'll have him call you, and he'll get back to you. You don't have to advocate for different positions. Just if that in the rare instance somebody does try to challenge you, just send them back to me. So all that to say, really appreciate your time today. I'm happy to stay for as long as anybody wants to have a conversation.
thank you, Dan.